Okay.
All right, guys, welcome to Warrior Leadership Training. I'm so glad you guys are here. And of course, you guys know that if you're on time, you're late. And if you're early, then you're on time. So you get to hear all the good stuff. You get to meet some of the speakers. You get some of the inside scoop and stuff like that. But what I'm super excited about is we have Ron Klein, who is going to be teaching and talking with us tonight. And Ron Klein is an ordinary man who has accomplished extraordinary things. He's a problem solver. Every solution has resulted in a monumental change, either in a new invention or a simple solution. His innovative ideas have changed the world, and this is not a joke. He is the innovator of, let me grab the back of my wallet here. Like, you know that little magic strip on your credit card, this thing right here? Yeah, he's the innovator of that. For the magic strip on the credit card validity checking system, and the developer of the computerized system for the real estate multiple listing services. So for you guys, that's the MLS. That's that big old long list of all the houses for sale and not for sale. He's also the innovator of voice response for banking industries and bond quotation and transformation information for the New York Stock Exchange. Ron's latest patent is for a device that enables a visually impaired person the ability to identify an item when in physical range of that item. It utilizes a free smartphone app and a special coded adhesive label. So I'm going to actually pull up a video. Let me get that up here. I'm going to share my screen with you guys. All right, let me do that. Let me share the screen, and then you're going to get to hear this video. So 1 second. There it is. All right, can you guys see my screen? I'm looking for some thumbs up. Awesome. Thank you, Kim. I can always rely on you. All right, here we go.
I think the statistics today talk about 609 million credit cards that are in existence just here in the U.S. When I hear those kind of numbers, I almost have to be apologetic. I grew up right out of the Depression, and I was just a very, very inquisitive kid, very inventive, coming up with all my own toys. By the time I turned 18, the Korean War was on, I was drafted, and after I came back from the service, people were making what they called charge purchases. They would come in with their credit card, which had an embossed number on it, and the merchant would have to look up that credit card number on a long list of negative account numbers that they were given every month by the credit card companies. Right around that time, reel-to-reel tape recorders came out, and I figured, I've got a great idea. If I could take a piece of tape and record the account number on that piece of tape, paste it on the back of the piece of plastic, and build a device that mimics a tape recorder, so that if I inserted the card and pulled it out rapidly, it could possibly work, and it did. And that was the invention of the magnetic tape on the back of the credit card. I was delighted when I saw all the problems it solved amongst all the department stores in which we installed it. Never made tons of money off the patent, but I made tons of money when I came up with lots more ideas and inventions with the development of the nutrition system to raise chickens in 8-week periods, the development of MLS, multiple listing service for the real estate industry, the development of voice response for the banking industry, which eventually took me into the New York Stock Exchange, and I was there for over a quarter of a century developing things for the exchange. My nickname and what I'm known for is I'm the grandfather of possibilities, and that's me. If I had my life to live over again, I would want it to be exactly the same way. A good friend of mine always said, Ron, make sure you live life to the fullest, and when you go, make sure you go empty. The life of credit cards may be coming to an end at some point because we live in a world of obsolescence. However, we've had great longevity of the magnetic strip of the credit card. I don't say weird, but I am different. I'm a free thinker, and I just do my thing, and I don't worry about what people think. That's my plight in life. Wow, that's good enough for Broadway.
All right, let me stop sharing that. I'll get everybody on the screen. There we go. Awesome.
Okay, I know the guys, the women love me, but I'm not sure about the guys. With that invention of the magnetic strip on the credit card. But how did you like that? All I did was take the same idea as reel-to-reel tape recorders, and I made you the motor. That's it. That was one of the simplest challenges I ever had in my life, because all I had to do, and here's the whole thing I'm going to teach you tonight, and I'm going to talk about. Simplification. You've got to simplify everything. And what did I do when that challenge came to me? First of all, there's no word problem. You go home and look up that word problem in your dictionary, tear that page out, then take a highlighter and highlight challenge and highlight that, and everything is a challenge, because there's behind every challenge, and there's magic behind every challenge. There's an opportunity. So with that credit card thing, when the major department store came to me, what they said was, it takes too long to make a charge purchase, because, I don't know, maybe some of you remember, you had to roll out, they would write out the slip, and they would have to roll out the credit card, which was just embossed your name and the card number. And then they would have to look up in that big long book of all those negative account numbers to see if your number was in there. If it wasn't in there, then you were good to go. So that was one problem. And the other problem was the burden was on the wrong person. It was on the merchant. It shouldn't have been on the merchant. So I said, geez, I could solve that. Take all the numbers, put it into some kind of memory system, and I gave him a little keypad. And he would key it in, and if it didn't come up on the memory system, they were good to go. And I figured, you know what? I got to put some smarts in that little piece of plastic. And I just stepped back and I said, now, what can I do? And right around that time, this was in 1966, just around the time everybody was born, right? No, I don't hear anything. I see a lot of smiles. So right around that time, reel-to-reel tape recorders came out, and I said, and you saw it on the video, I just took a little piece of that tape, and it recorded the account number on it, and I built a little device that mimics the tape recorder, and that's what the merchants have on their desk. And I took that little card with the magnetic tape on it, and I made you the motor. Remember, you'd push it in slow and pull it out fast, and then they just made it where you would just swipe it. How simple that was. If everybody was there, you probably would have done the same thing I would have done. Now, here's the big thing. Here's the innovative one. I invented it in 1966, and I got the patent in 1969. Here we are in 2018, and that magnetic strip is still around, used on your driver's license and hotel keys, and so on and so forth. Why did it survive in a world of this obsolescence world that, things last 6 months and then they get thrown away? The reason is, and normally I ask this on the stage, but since you can't talk back to me, the reason it lasted so long is it doesn't require energy. And if it doesn't require energy, it doesn't radiate. So it's not a transmitter. So there was never fraudulence at the point of sale. The fraudulence was after the point of sale. The fraudulence was at the man in the middle or back at the server. So now we've got the chip on the card, and that's a whole different story, and I'll answer questions about that a little later. I'm not a great lover and advocate of the chip. It's slow, and notice how many people are being compromised. Because once you energize that chip, it radiates, it becomes a transmitter. How about somebody putting that into this new little fangangled reader, and it's energized, now there has power on it, and it radiates, and somebody comes up behind you in the line with a scanner and scans that card that's energized and transmitting your number, and they say, thank you very much. Okay, but we'll move on. So that's how simple that challenge was. And here's the philosophy that I live with. Everything has to be taken down to like what we learned in grade school, in 8th grade, word problems, where they've got all this ancillary information in the word problem. And there's the given in there,
and there's the solution they're looking for, but a whole bunch of other junk that's not important. So when I say simplify a challenge, look at it like a word problem. Say, what's the given? What's the solution we're looking for? And everything else is the journey in between. That's the minutia. And most people, unfortunately, start in the minutia. That's not the place to start. You want to start once you identify and say, what's the given? With the credit card, the given was it was too slow, and they had to look up all these numbers in a long big book. And the other thing was the burden was on the wrong person. It was on the merchant. He had to do the looking up. And what was the solution? Speed it up and take the burden off the merchant. That's how you solve a problem. So there's a gift behind every challenge. Now I'm going to tell you 3 things right now, and I want you to write them down. This is probably the most important thing you're going to hear in my entire story. In order to be successful in life and in business, and watch my hands, you got to be smart, you got to be daring, you got to be different. And when I say smart, I don't mean a PhD from Harvard. I mean, pay attention, learn something new every day, listen, be in the environment. Even if you think you're not interested, everybody has something to offer. So what I'm saying is be aware, learn something every day, tuck it away in your brain, and then if you feel you want to use it,
my company meeting I'm supposed to be at.
Okay. The second thing is to be different. Making mistakes. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Mistakes are part of your education. If you're not making mistakes, you're not learning anything. I always say, if you painted it the wrong color the first time, paint it a different color. And the last thing, is be different. And what that means is we don't sell ideas, we sell benefits. Everything has to be a benefit. So you want to be smart, and different, okay? Learn something new every day. Don't be afraid to make mistakes and provide benefits. If you do that and practice that, you're going to be successful. Okay, I think we've got somebody else on there that's not muted. Is that right?
I took care of it, Ron.
Okay. So along with that, you're going to hear a lot of things about me and my story. And what I'd like to do is plug you in along with my story, because it was the evolution of, before we had a lot of automation, it was very simple life, and we had software hadn't even been invented yet. Everything was hardware, transistors and resistors and capacitors. We would build little circuit boards and machines and do things like that. But I want to take you through the evolution of how you can be successful. I had lots of ups and lots of downs too. It wasn't all easy, but the innovation and the ideas and the challenges sometimes, and the opportunities come from the things that are not very obvious. And that's because you learn something new every day. So I became known as the problem solver. And the next thing that came to me was Frank Perdue happened to come to me many, many years ago with a formula, and he needed some kind of system to work the formula on how to grow chickens to full maturity in 8 weeks instead of the long-term maturity period. And we have healthier chickens, fed better, and so on and so forth. And they go from the chick to a full-bred chicken in 8 weeks. And that was the second thing I got to do. And that was a great project. Then I did the multiple listing for real estate, because the realtors came to me and they said, you can solve a problem. We've got to do this. We've got to go from point A to point B. I won't take a lot of time and go through those details, because the stories get better. Then the last thing that I did was with this factory, as it was growing, people were saying, wouldn't it be great? This was just when touch-tone phones came out. Wouldn't it be great if we could use the codes on the touch-tone phones and key in our account number to the banks, and they would take that account number, look it up in the bank system, and convert it to voice and come back and give you your account information in voice. So that was my voice response system. And the way I did that, in fact, the first voice response system, I did that in 1967, almost sounded like a robot, because I took a big magnetic drum that was spinning very fast, milliseconds then. That was the main memory back in those days. That was before so on and so forth. They only had the mainframes. And then I put little reed heads along the entire magnetic drum and recorded every symbol and syllable in the English language, so that when I would convert the text information from the computers at the bank to voice, it would sound like a riddle. And then after a while, I synthesized that, and that was another invention. So that was the voice response. In the company, with all the real estate products that I was building, the company started growing very rapidly because I had production people, I had draftsmen, I had engineers, and I had little circuit designers. So I was up to, we were up to almost 125 employees, and I needed money. So back in the late 60s, I raised I raised actually $750,000 to really fund the company and meet payroll and grow larger. And in those days, $750,000 was like millions, and the company was growing quite rapidly. It grew so fast that we were running out of money again. And I had to pay a lot of high sophisticated people to design circuits. So my investors came to me and said, Ron, it's time to go public. Well, I said, I have no idea. What are you talking about public? In those days, I didn't know what public was. A public offering. I said, public, to me, that's like those little stalls that they put at construction sites if somebody has to go. So I said, I learned fast. When I wanted to learn about going public, I went to the library, took out the 1934 Securities Act book, read it from cover to cover. I was an expert in S1 and S2 registrations, took the company public and raised another couple $1 million, which was like 10 million then. The company was going gangbusters. A major insurance company came to me and said, you've got quite the company here, young man. And I was starting to reach retirement age. I was 34 years old. And I figured, ooh, I could sell the company now for lots of money. And I figured, okay, because I came from a very rich family. My dad was a mailman, and my mom worked in a department store. So you could say I was nobody special. But my head was screwed on straight. So I thought, smart, daring, and different. I sold the company, and I figured, great, I'm going to go fishing. I fished for 3 weeks, and I said, this is not for me. I'm an 18-hour-a-day man.
And what is it? It's called THC.
So I went back to the company, and I said, you got to let me go. I want to be free. I've got to go back to work. I'll give you my stock options back and just keep the money. And they said, okay. So then I decided, well, I wanted to go back to work. I had no idea what I was going to do. So I started a company called General Associates. I figured that was general enough. And I figured I'll sell other people's products, and I'll just be a rep until I can figure out what I want. I know I don't want another 125 employees. I don't want to be labor intensified. I want to come up with a good idea. Now starts the story, okay? Opportunity. Everybody with me so far? Raise your thumbs. Lots of thumbs, okay. So I figured, okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to sell. Well, I was pretty sharp in communication equipment and teletypewriters. And a teletypewriter then, in those days, this was the late 60s, early 70s, it was the email of the year. This was before PCs, and this was before video terminals. So it was like a typewriter, an electric typewriter, but it was a communication device. They would hook it up to a telephone line with some current, and that was what's called Twix and telex machines, and that's how companies and people would communicate in hard copy. So I was pretty sharp in that, and I was pretty sharp in modems, and I was calling on Associated Press one day, one of my old customers. And while I was sitting there trying to sell him some equipment, communication equipment, I said, Paul, what's that thing sitting on your desk? It looked like a bid sheet from the Western Union Corporation. And he said, oh, we bid on teletype equipment every week. They refurbish it. They're up in Allentown, Pennsylvania. And because, we're in the communication business, we use a lot of machines, but we're so overstocked. You're welcome to the bid sheet if you want it. And I said, absolutely, I'm interested in everything. That changed my life. I paid attention, and I was a good salesman. I read something upside down on the guy's desk. I took that bid sheet, I rented a truck, and I lived in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and Allentown was about 60 miles from my home, Allentown, Pennsylvania. I rented a truck and went up there and looked around, and I saw all these teletypes that they were refurbishing. Thousands of machines constantly every week because they were selling them to the RCAs and the ITTs and the Associated Presses. And people would come in and bid on these things, pennies on the dollar, and they would take these refurbished machines and use them. And I figured, wow, maybe I could be in the parts business. So I bid on the machines. And I came home with a whole bunch of these Twix and Telex machines. And right around that time, PCs came out. And IBM was using PCs with their Selectric typewriters. That's the one with the little ball on it. You people with gray hair will remember that. The millennials, I don't know about that, but I'm a senior millennial, so I remember. Anyway, IBM used their Selectric typewriter as the I/O device. Everybody else was using teletypes. And here I am with a whole bunch of teletype machines. I took them home and I bought a compressor, an air compressor, some WD-40 oil, some mineral spirits, a whole bunch of stuff, took them down my basement, cleaned them up, and I was selling them. I was buying them for like 10 cents on the dollar, and I was selling them for $300 a piece out of my garage, just advertising them local. I was so happy. It was a little business. My wife wasn't too happy because the mineral spirits going through the heat vents from the basement, it stunk up the house. I mean, it was terrible, but she was tolerant of me. One day, a gentleman, and this was another opportunity, okay? So far, I picked up a bid sheet from the guy's desk. Now somebody comes in to buy a teletype from me, comes to my garage, and he says, excuse me, can I use your men's room? I said, this is my home. I said, I got a powder room. I don't have a men's room. And I said, but you're welcome to use that. He went, did his thing, came out, bought my teletype from the garage, left, and I was excited. 5 minutes later, my wife came running out. What an opportunity. And she did this with her fingers. You take your teletypes, you take your compressor, you take your mineral spirits, get the hell out of this house. That guy had lousy aim. Okay, thumbs up. I had to get myself a little office. So now I had a little shop where I was refurbishing teletypes and selling some spare parts. All from, again, reading a bid sheet on a guy's desk. Then I got a call from Western Union that they were putting up 12,000 old teletype machines that were used on battleships during the Second World War. They were in those steel cabinets, big old heavy machines, and they were built in the 50s. Would I be interested in bidding on them? Because they were going into the satellite business and divesting themselves of all their equipment. And I said, yeah, why not? 12,000 machines? I bid pennies on them, absolute pennies. And nobody else bid. And I figured, uh-oh, something's not right. I won all 12,000 machines. However, I wasn't too smart. I wasn't paying attention. You know how you make mistakes? 4,000 were in a warehouse in Allentown, only 60 miles from my house. I was elated. The other about 8,000 machines were in Chicago, Dallas, LA, all over the United States. And they said, now you know, Ron, you got to take possession of these things in 30 days. They weighed hundreds and hundreds of pounds each. They were in warehouses everywhere. Now I didn't have machines. I had a big liability. How the heck was I going to get rid of these machines? I should have paid attention and not bid on all 12,000. So my problem, how do you solve a problem? Well, Ron, your problem is you got to get rid of the machines. You can't rebuild them. You can't do anything with them. So I called the junk man. And the junk man says, okay, let's see what we've got here. So he opens up the bottom of these machines in the cabinets. They were loaded with electronic circuit boards. Now, they were made in the 50s. In the 50s, when they made printed circuit cards with transistors and resistors and capacitors, they made them with gold traces because gold had great conductivity and it was so cheap then. You know, I keep looking at my screen and you're seeing the side of my head. Sorry, not too bad. Profile, okay. So they had all this gold, these gold circuits. And the junk man said, you know, if you take these gold circuit boards and submerge them in cyanide, the cyanide eats the gold salts off the printed circuit and it all surfaces to the top. We'll skim it off And now we have gold salts and we split it 50-50. Well, I had 8,000 machines, hundreds and hundreds of circuit boards. We were so fat with cash, it was incredible. Gold then was $35 an ounce, and it had just soared that year to $800 an ounce. It went crazy, and I would have been happy at $35 an ounce. We had loads of cash, but now we had 8,000 pure junk with keyboards, steel cabinets, printer keyboards, printers, and so on and so forth that were useless. What do I do now? Now I really have junk. I called the junk man back again. And he said, well, let's look at them a little bit more carefully. He said, these things were on battleships. The cabinets are steel cabinets, but they're very rich in chromium because chromium won't rust when they're out at sea. And he said, guess what? Toyota is just bringing in their new cars. This was in the early 70s, and they're having a rust problem because they don't have enough chrome in their steel, and they're buying up whatever kind of chrome they can find. And I said, you know what? Call Toyota, give them everything as long as they take it out of here. In 3 weeks, I had all 8,000 machines removed. Now I was in the business. I had 4,000 machines in Allentown, Pennsylvania, ready to be refurbished. I could sell parts, 50 cents on the dollar. I was in business because smart, daring, and different. I read a bid sheet on the guy's desk. I paid attention, and I learned how to solve a challenge. Everybody has that so far? Talk about opportunity. Okay, I want to see thumbs up. Now the story starts, okay? I got a call 3 months later from a person at the New York Stock Exchange who said, we called Western Union, and because we're expanding our trading floor in the mid-70s to more inquiry stations, and Western Union had 273 special teletype machines that hung on the wall with keyboards that the traders could go and type in the stock codes and get reports and prints. And we found out that they sold all of their teletype equipment to a little company in New Jersey. Then it was New Jersey, okay. Would you be interested in doing a deal with us? And I said, interested? I'll be there tomorrow. I said, I'll give you a full payout lease over 2 years for X number of dollars for all 273 machines if you let me be a service company to maintain these things for the rest of the life as long as they're on the floor of the trading floor of the New York Stock Exchange. They said, absolutely, we don't want to maintain them. We don't want the responsibility. You guys are pretty knowledgeable about teletypes. You got a deal. I was immediately in the maintenance service business at the trading floor of the New York Stock Exchange every day, leasing equipment and maintaining it. I hired a technician. What a wonderful deal. I was making lots of money. Now I was there and I'm looking around and I'm saying, well, first of all, if you can see my hand, the paper at the end of the day was stacked up almost above my knees. That's how much paper there was. Because they were running around, again, this was in the early 70s, writing things on little pieces of paper, throwing them around on the floor, and the paper just mounted up. And everything ran on inertia. It was almost like the government. It just ran on inertia. There was no electronic planning or any smart things that they were doing. And I said, I can automate so much stuff here because PCs had just come out. I said, are you people interested? And they thought I was a big company because here I am with teletype machines and it's tech and the big boss who came to the exchange every day running around, making sure that everything worked. And they said, well, what can you do? Well, I automated. I came up with program trading and I came up with other things. And while I was there at the New York Stock Exchange, and this is my big claim to fame, this is the opportunity, I went to the bond trading floor. There's two things that the New York Stock Exchange sells. They provide trading for equity, that's stocks, at the New York Stock Exchange, and they also trade fixed income, which is bonds, the corporate bonds. So they trade the corporate bonds and they trade the stocks. The stocks were all automated already. the traders would trade them all around the country in their offices on Wall Street, upstairs trading. But the bond market was still an auction market. They would run around like this with telephones in their ears and throwing their hands up and down, bidding and selling and doing all this nonsense on the trading floor, buying and selling corporate listed bonds. And I went to the exchange and I said, that's ridiculous. I said, this is so easy to automate. You automated the stock market. Why don't you automate the bond market? And they said, Ron, they've been doing it like this for 205 years. They're not going to change. They love the auction market. And I said, I can automate this so easily with some simple equipment. I said, if I can automate this, will you give me an exclusive license to disseminate corporate listed bonds for the New York Stock Exchange? And I would have it exclusively. And they said, certainly, negotiate it because it'll never happen. And I said, okay. I built a box, a little filter box that went on their main line that would only extract out the bond information. Then I bought some inexpensive video terminals, hooked it to my filter box, and it worked. It worked beautiful. It would pull out the bonds. I would type in the bonds of interest, and every time that bond would come past the system, it would alert and flash it was the bond monitor, and they could trade. And I figured, this is great. I could run telephone lines to the traders' offices, put this equipment in their office, and run the line from the New York Stock Exchange to their office, and I automated the bond market. I started making phone calls to every trader on Wall Street. If I wasn't buying or selling a bond in 5 seconds, it'd hang up on me. I went, oh, well, they were right. How the heck am I going to sell this? They don't want to even talk to me. So I befriended the biggest bond trading manager on Wall Street, who was a phenomenal guy with the largest firm. And I said, I'm going to run a telephone line to your office free. I'm going to give you a system, a fantastic little system, no charge for 30 days. Put it on your desk, and you can trade bonds right at your desk without even talking to your people on the trading floor. And I said, you'll have the information before anybody else. Will you do it? He said, I have nothing to lose. I gave him the system. I ran an AT&T telephone line to his office. He was buying bonds like crazy. His phone rang off the hook after a couple of weeks, and they're saying, Joe, what the heck are you doing? We can't even top a bond. You're topping everybody's bond. Every bond we try and buy, you're topping it. What are you doing? He says, oh, you need one of those little Ron Klein boxes. They said, what the heck's a Ron Klein box? Oh, I got a box and a telephone line and I got a video terminal. My phone rang off the hook, okay? They said, we got to have one of these boxes. We can't trade on the trading floor anymore. We got one of the biggest firms that's walking all over us. And these were fat times on Wall Street. It was 1983 when I finally got this done. There were 1,500 bond traders. And I said, okay, every bond trader has to pay me $10,000 to join my club just to trade bonds in my system. And they said, that's ridiculous. They said, but we need it. We'll make that money back in less than a month. We'll make it back in a couple of weeks. Okay. And I said, all right, now that's $10,000 times 1,500 bonds. Do the math in your spare time. That's a lot of millions of dollars that I collected in 90 days. Now I said, but okay, however, now you need this little box in the video terminal and you have to buy that. And they said, oh no, we don't buy anything on Wall Street. We only rent the equipment. I figured, okay. Well, the box cost me $100 to build. And I figured, how's $300 a month? Fantastic. We love it. It was fantastic. And unfortunately, it only lasted for a quarter of a century. I rented those boxes and that system for a quarter of a century to all those traders on Wall Street. And then from there, my company just grew and grew and grew. Now think about this. Smart, daring, and different. What did I do? I read a bid sheet on a guy's desk. All right, unmute the line. I want to hear a few comments.
1 second, I'm doing that right now. All right, everybody unmute. Oh, there you go. Wow. Anybody got anything to say to Ron?
Anybody like that story?
Amazing adventure.
Quite innovative.
Yeah, I like your
How much do you
story
think
as well, especially about the
Well,
teletype
think
machine.
about $300,
You got whatever you bring it to be.
and that was $300 a month.
Not brown.
All right.
But the point is, I would like to hear some question on how simple
37.
everything sounded, because nothing is, if I didn't have the talent, and I happen to be an engineer and a mathematician, that's what I studied through the GI. It was, if I didn't know how to electronically solve those problems myself, I would have hired somebody. I would have said, this is what I want done, and I would have outsourced it to someone. I didn't have to do that. Well, after a while, I did hire myself a software programmer and another engineer, because we were building a lot of stuff, a lot of equipment. And from then, at the New York Stock Exchange, and then I did it for the American Stock Exchange, and I did it for the CBOE and the Futures Exchange, and the COMEX and so on. And we just grew, and the equipment grew, and the company grew quite large. I didn't retire from that company for 36 years. It was 36 years old. By the way, I failed at retirement 3 times. It doesn't work, and I'm still working, because they say if you stand still, they throw dirt on you. So I'm not empty yet, and I'm still moving. But I'm sure lots of folks out there, I don't know how many are out there, but you must have lots of questions. And again, simplicity and really identifying what is the issue, what's the solution I'm looking for. And remember, if I made a mistake and painted it the wrong color the first time, what am I going to do? I'm going to paint it a different color. There's only plan A, okay? That's the point. Simplify it. Look for that gift behind every challenge. And the thing that you can say about the challenges and the gifts that I found, they weren't typical opportunities that came out from those challenges. So it doesn't have to be a challenge or an opportunity that smacks you right smack in the face. There's an opportunity out there behind every challenge, because it's not a problem, it's not a frustration, and it's going to provide a benefit. If it doesn't provide a benefit, drop it. So what has happened all through the years, I've got lots of inventions. What has happened is I became an IP expert, an intellectual property expert. So that's what I do. And I am a consultant for a lot of attorneys, for physicians. I am a consultant for and a mentor for many, many people, because I can handle any kind of problem or challenge in any facet of business or life. And you can do the same thing too. Simplify it. You know, I look at every challenge as a big room with a front door. And I say, okay, here's the challenge, here's the issue. Open the front door, don't close it yet. Look around. If there's a back door, I feel free to walk in and close the front door behind me. Because if it doesn't work out, and if it was a mistake, I leave through the back door. So, piece of cake, it's easy. Smart, daring, and different. Okay, I'm open for some questions.
Well, Julie said this is a true testimonial of, turning cents into multi-millions, just by being smart of what you do.
Well, I am inventive, and I like to, there were lots of hurdles through the way. I mean, there was lots of inventions and lots of creations, lots of innovation. I'm working on a major project now where I invented something and came up with a lot of innovations for it. And now I gave it to the marketplace outside, and they're now my innovators. Everybody is saying, Ron, do you know what you can do with this and this? And I'll tell you about that a little later. But I want everybody to get this whole concept of, if you were there with me, it's not a very sophisticated story along the way. This took many years, from the early 60s all the way up into the 90s. I was building this thing, and it was going quite well. I was billing a lot of money because And that was like a cash cow. $300 a month times 1,500 units, that generates a lot of revenue, plus the 15 million I made on the front end. So I built a cash cow. I didn't have a lot of employees. You can count them on two hands, sometimes only on one hand, because it was just maintaining what we were doing on Wall Street, making sure the telephone lines were all working, and making sure that the equipment wasn't bad. If the equipment crapped out, we wouldn't even repair it. We would throw it away and put a new one in. For that figure, for that money, it wouldn't even pay to repair a $100 box if it failed when I get $300 a month. So I made money by putting a new one in. So, and this way we're always enhancing it. So it's that thinking, that creative thinking, very simplistic, the way you do it, breeds success. So again, I'm open for questions.
All right, Ron. Well, Kimberly has a question. I'm actually going to unmute her so she can ask the question herself. She gets that privilege. So,
okay.
All right, Kimberly, go ahead.
Hi, Ron.
Hi.
Thanks for all these great tips. I think sometimes we try to overthink things, so keeping it simplified is definitely the way to go. My question for you was, so did you have like a mentor or an advisor kind of guiding you, along the way? Like who was your sounding board?
That's a good question. And I usually forget to answer that or state it early on in my talk until somebody comes up with the idea of asking it. My dad was, they were all working class people. He was a mailman all his life, and my mom worked in the department store. They were they're very supportive because my toys back in the Depression days, my most important toy was masking tape and cardboard. And I would build things from masking tape and cardboard. And if I was lucky, I got 10 cents a week as a recess money, because things were tight. This was Second World War year days. And then for my birthday, I got a big gift, a ball of string. So, that was my kind of thing. But my mentor was my grandfather, my mother's father. He was a very, very famous inventor. My grandfather, my parents, my dad came from Austria. My mom came from Romania, and my grandparents were French. And he invented the first boiler propulsion system for steamships, the big boiler system that made the propellers go around to propel a steamship. It was fantastic, and I hung around him constantly. Then he invented the torpedo detectors during the First World War for submarines. Then he invented the pressing machine for tailors, the big pressing machine that would come down and press your clothes. He was a diamond cutter. He was a great tailor, and he invented the first rabbit ear antennas for TVs when they came out in the early 40s. I don't know if you guys remember that. They were little antennas that sat on top of the TV with a little switch on it. And he passed away when I was 16 years old, and he died in my arms. But I love this guy because he said, you can do anything you want. Anything. There's nothing you can't do, Ron. You can do anything you want. Even if you don't understand it, learn it. You can do it. He said, you may not be the best at it, but you can do it. He even taught me how to sew, and I play guitar from the time I was a young boy. And the first project that I ever did was I bought a whole sheet of canvas and made a guitar case for myself, stitching it on a foot-operated, hand-operated sewing machine. That's how good I was at sewing. And the one thing I regret, and this is in my book, he had an old model, 1929 Model A Ford that, and this was many, many years ago, but there was an antique then. It was magnificent. And I was 16 years old, and he willed it to me. And as a 16-year-old brand new driver, I figured, I don't want an old piece of junk. I sold it for $100. Can you believe that? I should be horsewhipped. Anyway, that's how I got my name, the grandfather of possibilities, because I was speaking on stage at with a very famous speaker one day, and he invited me to New Orleans for dinner to meet his wife. And we were sitting there, and she said, Ron, where did you get all this talent? be so inventive. And I told her the story. And she said, wow, you're almost like your grandfather. I think you've got so many possibilities. Wait a minute. You're the grandfather of possibilities. And that name stuck with me and it branded me. And that's where I am at 83 years old, the grandfather of possibility. Still doing it. Does that answer your question? Is Kimberly still out there? I think you got her muted.
Sorry, yeah, I'm back. I had a little computer glitch, but I think I got most of what you're saying, so thank you. That's awesome.
You're welcome. Thanks for asking,
yeah.
Kimberly. Thank you. Anyone else? Let's ask a question. You have one, Ken?
I'm sorry. I muted myself and I'm asking questions.
Oh, by the way, my book is available on Amazon.
Right. You mean this one right here?
Yep. My wife is an author and a writer. In fact, right now she's editing for a client. And the book has a lot of interesting stories in it. It's my biography, and it has all of that, a lot that I've talked about tonight, plus a lot more. And I think it takes about an hour to read. It's a quick read, and I think it's pretty inspiring.
I would say it's a good read, Ron. Your wife is a very great author, and she knows how to write very well. Now, I know you've had some big challenges in your life. What was probably one of the biggest challenges you've ever had, and how did you overcome it?
Well, I've had some physical challenges, quite a few physical challenges. I don't talk about those too much. However, I've had a lot of business challenges where everything sounded great and the ups and downs. I mean, I've sold pizzas door to door to make money while I was trying to grow the company. I had threats of walkout when the union wanted to come in and take over. So lots of stories there. But the biggest challenge that I had, and I overcame the challenge, was unfortunately, when I was in the Korean War, I made it as far as Incheon. I was with I was a forward observer for a armored artillery battalion. We were mobile, and I was the one that would go out, spot the targets, and call in the fire missions. And unfortunately, on my 28th mission, a sniper got me. Okay, and that put me in a non-walking capacity for a while. But I overcame that, and I did a pretty good job at it because finally they've tried everything. It's inoperable, and I finally ended up riding a bicycle, a real bike, a road bike, and I was riding a bike every day to bend over and work the endorphins in my facet joints in my spine, and I was able to open up the pinched nerve areas where I got injured. And that helped. And I became so proficient at it that I started entering triathlons where I rode the bike and somebody else did the swim and someone else did the run. And we started winning medals. And yeah, I was doing really good because I was riding every day. We won bronze, and then we won silver, and I finally won a gold medal. And they said, you were so proficient at riding and you were so fast, why don't you try out for the Senior Olympics? And I had no idea as to what the Senior Olympics was. They would choose, it was age category starting at age 50, and every 5 years it would go up. And it would be with each county, and then if you won in the county level, you'd go on to the higher level, and then at the higher level, you'd go on to the state level, and so on. Well, make a long story short, here I was with a serious injury, and in 2003, I won the gold medal, and I was the athlete of the year in Sarasota County, state of Florida. So that's how I overcame that challenge. And I've had lots of unfortunate accidents along the way, but I'm here to talk about it.
I've seen you have the pinched nerve. I know what that's like. I know that you've had this pain for a long time, and just riding your bike. I mean, 30 miles every day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that helped with that problem. It strengthened a lot of your muscles.
The pinched nerve problem, and it's both a pinched nerve, and I had an old injury at the same time in Korea in my neck. So I have a pretty bad scar, and there's a lot of scar tissue inside. And what it's doing is it's shortening the muscle. And there I am, folks, with my head to the left because they're trying to fix it. So other than that, I'm perfect at 83.
Yeah, I tell everybody on the calls and stuff that I am going to adopt you as my grandpa.
Thank you.
Because you and Arlene are the most amazing couple. How long have you been married?
September will be 59 years.
59 years. Most of you haven't been around that long.
That's right.
Okay.
Well, you know, it's working out so well, Ken, that we're going to start living together.
Well, I tell everybody you guys are a bunch of jailbirds. You look like, whenever I say you and your wife, you guys look like spring chickens, a bunch of teenagers that just met and are happily in love with each other, always arm in arm, hand in hand. You're always pulling out the chair for her and making sure that she's taken care of. So, thank you for being a great example out there for a lot of boys and a lot of men out there that need to see this.
You have to work at it. No, it's not always perfect and it's not everything is fine, but you have to work at it. You have to learn communications. And that's so important. I always say, and this has nothing to do with my wife, but when you talk to someone, it's so important that you're both on the same page. For instance, before I can really make a point to someone, I want to make sure that they understand where I'm coming from. You can agree to disagree, but I want to make sure that I give them enough content that they're familiar with, that they can understand and say, oh yeah, I understand what you're saying. I get it. Now we can communicate. Because if you can't do that, you might as well say to somebody, I refuse to have a battle of wits with an unarmed person. Right?
Exactly.
Remember that, guys. Refuse to have a battle of wits with an unarmed person. So you better educate them first.
There you go. So before you go, if you could leave a nugget of information for these entrepreneurs, these leaders, what would be one thing that you would tell them that would help them as leaders?
There's almost one word that really describes understanding, communicating, and making something successful. Simplify. If you can't simplify it to what its basic roots are, I do a lot of masterminds. I do tons and tons of masterminds. And the first thing I do when we go around the table is I say to everyone, give me your elevator pitch. Tell me what you do, what your business is, so on and so forth, what your pain point is. Just give me your quick story in one sentence or less. Try. Because Einstein said, if you can't tell me what you do in one sentence or less, then you don't understand it yourself. So most people in my masterminds, they go on and on and on with this long dissertation. And I look at them and I say, you know what? I'm going to paraphrase in a few words what you just told me. And then I'm going to ask you, is that what you told me? And it ends up where I'll say, you got a communication problem. You've got a parent problem. You've got a friend problem. You're not communicating, whatever the problem is. Or you've got this kind of problem. Is that what you're trying to tell me? And they said, yes. I said, but you're having difficulty explaining it. I said, before you tell me again next time, simplify it. So the word is simplify it and be smart, daring, and different. Don't be afraid to make that mistake. Don't make the same mistake twice. But if you painted it the wrong color, paint it a different color. And then if you have to paint it the third time, make it two-tone. It'll work.
Oh my goodness. One last question, and then we're going to wrap it up. And it was from Kelly. She wanted to know what was the most important lesson that you learned in your lifetime, in the 83 years you've been on this planet. what was the most important lesson that you've learned?
One word. Listen. That's it.
There you go. You got 2 ears and 1 mouth. Just
Listen.
supposed to listen twice as much.
Those people are so busy thinking about what they're going to tell you while they're listening or while they're telling you something. You never even heard them. Maybe you picked up 1 or 2 things. Listen. You'll learn.
Awesome, awesome. Well, everybody, we want to thank Ron. So let's do I'm going to do the full screen. So we all do our wave at our guest speaker, let them know how much we appreciate him and everything.
Great. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Ron. I appreciate you coming on, and I always enjoy spending time with you and your lovely wife. Before you go, and I know I asked you before, we have a success vault, kind of like the tub of love.
Okay.
So I was just wondering, would you be willing to donate something to our success vault?
Do you have a drawing where one person wins?
Yep.
Okay. I can't give them a lot of time, but how about a one-to-one personal phone call with me?
Like an hour phone call with you, one-on-one?
An hour is pretty tight because my schedule is so tight, but let's say at least a half hour.
Okay, half hour, one-on-one coaching with you.
Exactly.
Boom.
You got it.
There you go. Do you guys like that? I want to see if you like that. Some thumbs up. Look at everybody's like, yeah. I mean, think about this. You get to spend time with Ron for half hour sitting there asking him questions. Now, remember, if you win this, you better be able to communicate him how he can help you or how, what your project is. Because he says, keep it simple.
I've got one other goodie for them to think about. My latest invention was for the visually impaired. I have a very dear friend who is blind, and I asked him one day, what is it? What's on your wish list? What would you like that's fairly simple that will help you? And he said, I'd like something that I can use to identify everything that I come in contact with in my daily life, my spices, my clothing, and et cetera, et cetera. And I came up with a special app on the phone, which is free, and then these little adhesive labels. It looks like a QR code, but it's highly special. They're adhesive, and they paste it on anything they want, point their phone at it, tell it what it is, and now anytime they point their phone at that label again, they know exactly what it is. If they want to change it, they can program that label over and over again. I'm going to give everybody the name of the app that you can load it on your phone. It's free on your iPhone or on your Android, and then go to the website, or you could probably, I'm trying to think, on the website, I'll give you that too, there's a sample label. You can take a picture of that, or you can use that and just play with it, innovate, come up with all kinds of ideas. And if you come up with something good, I'll even put you in business with me. But for instance, here's one idea for somebody that's even not sighted. Let's say you're going to move and you got a big box and you're in your kitchen and you want to fill that up with all kinds of stuff. You take a label, put it on the top of the box, point the phone at it. Now it scans the label. And now as you fill up that box, you talk into your phone and tell everything that's in that box. Now that box gets to the new location. You walk up to that box and you say, geez, where's this box go and what's in it? Point your phone at it, tells you, this box goes in the kitchen and this is what's in it. Great idea for sighted. So the name of the app is Envision Eli. That's E-V, let's see, how do you spell Envision? E-V-E-N-I-S-I-O-N.
Somebody spell that? Kimberly?
Hold on.
Is it
E-N-V-I-S-I-O-N?
Right.
Envision?
And the second word is Eli, E-L-I. And the reason I named it that is Eli was the prophet who read the Bible in Braille in the biblical days. Okay, so go on Envision Eli for the app. It looks like an I with the 3 letters Eli in Braille. and it looks like a green eye.
Cool.
Download that. Then go on the website, envisioneli.com, and there's a sample label there. Print that label out and play with it. There'll be full instructions when you download the app, and you'll have so much fun with it. You'll come up with so many ideas. And when we launched it for the blind, there's 240 million blind people in the world and 42 million in this country. We launched it, and I wanted to help at least 1 or 2 blind people. We're getting thousands and thousands of orders from all over the world. And what they do is they buy this little packet of 100 labels that they can reuse over and over again and reprogram, and the whole packet of labels is only $20. What blind person wouldn't invest $20 to put markers on everything they own? So, but play around with it, and if you come up with a good idea, get back to Kent, and he'll get a hold of me. I'll put you in business.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ron. I appreciate you spending your time. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and nuggets of information. We're so blessed to have you. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry for keeping everybody up so late.
That's all right. They're used to it. They love getting this type of knowledge. They love hearing from different speakers they've never heard from. And, it just, if you're not learning, you're not growing. So these people are on here. They don't care if they got to stay up till midnight. They're here because they want to learn, they want to grow, and they want to be better leaders out there.
Can't give them my website so they can go on, and there's all kinds of interviews and things on the website.
I will do that.
Okay?
Yes, sir.
Great. Thank you all so much.
Thanks so much, Ron. All right. Everybody else can stay on here. I got a couple more announcements while we do that. So let me stop the recording.